pretty specific length of time. Andrew, let me read you this. It's just come in from Linda, that whilst you've been talking. Let me read you this. Linda in Luton.
every day to Getaway. Our 50,000 Avios offer ends 18th July 2022. Check your eligibility now. Search Barclaycard Avios Plus. Representative example, 72.4% APR representative variable. Purchase rate per annum 23.9% variable, based on a credit limit of £1,200. £20 monthly fee, subject to application and financial status. Eligibility and conditions apply. Double welcome bonus for new customers only. Usually 25,000 Avios.
Swarbrick on Sunday with Tom Swarbrick, live from Westminster on LBC.
12:48 is the time. As you know, Boris Johnson has been out of the country for some time. Rwanda and then NATO and the G7, so he's been away for a little while out of the country. What kind of state of his party, of his government, is he about to return to? Anne McElroy joins us, executive editor of The Economist. Adam Payne, too, is political editor of Politics Home. And Adam, very good to see you both. And let me start with you. What do you think Boris Johnson is going to be returning to this week, having been away for so long?
I think he returns to a party feeling immense disquiet. We know that he had that very difficult backwash of those two by-elections which were punishing. And now this latest story, which just looks like, again, failing to get a grip on terrible conduct in the party. Boris Johnson says he was shocked by Mr Pincher's behaviour, and by having to withdraw the whip, he's very keen to avoid another by-election. But if he's taking it seriously, well, it's very hard to avoid a by-election because it seems impossible, at least on the evidence that we have at the moment, that this MP should be allowed to continue to serve. So I think the backbenchers are feeling very feverish indeed.
Take the first exit.
And
now.
I get the sense, certainly from the stories in the Sunday papers, the front pages about Chris Pincher and the allegations made, allegations he denies, that this isn't going away. This story is not disappearing off somewhere and Boris Johnson can quietly forget about it.
I think that's right. I mean, yes, he does deny the allegations. We should note that. But there also does seem to be something of a backstory there on someone who was deemed to be a bit hard to handle, or at least needed to be very much kept in check. And that then raises this whole question of discipline and the relationship between number 10 and the whip's office. And of course, there's always, as we know, everyone knows there's the dark arts to the way that whips operate, and that there are sometimes they are allowed a leeway that others are not. But again, it comes back to, does Boris Johnson have a grip on his own backbenches, on his own operation? It's fine wandering off abroad, looking great in the G7 pictures, been very much welcomed in Ukraine, where he's genuinely held up as one of the leaders of the Western alliance against Russia in the war. When he comes back, the home front, however, is in real ferment.
And Adam, the line is that the Prime Minister didn't know, wasn't aware of allegations about Mr Pincher beforehand. Is that tenable? Is it true?
Hi, Tom. Hi. Well, the line flies in the face of the front pages we had this morning of the Mail on Sunday. I think the Mirror as well both report that the PM was aware of allegations before making him Deputy Chief Whip. I think the Mail on Sunday reported that the PM actually would joke about his reputation for his behaviour. But the thing is, Tom, we've been here so many times before, haven't we, where Downing Street puts out a certain line in response to a negative story, in response to a controversy, then that line collapses pretty rapidly and is replaced by a new line. And Downing Street gets itself into an awful mess. And from speaking to Tory MPs this weekend, the frustration I picked up from them is obviously they are disgusted by the allegations, which Pincher obviously have to be investigated, but they're so frustrated that Downing Street keeps doing this. It keeps getting itself in this mess where it point blank denies the initial story. Then it says, well, hold on a minute, there is this, and then the line collapses, and then suddenly it finds itself in another mess.
Yes, the question I asked Therese Coffey, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, was from the Mail on Sunday, a source in that paper claiming that Mr Johnson had said in 2019 when he was running for leader that he had, quote, the support of all the sex pests in the party. And I've got to tell you, Therese Coffey's reaction, she sounded, I'm afraid, like she was just broken, actually. Having to try and find a way through all this stuff, to find a defence for this stuff, must be exhausting the man.
I think so. It's what I thought was interesting, Tom, was it on Friday when Simon Hart, the Secretary of State for Wales, was doing the media round in the morning, and he was asked, at this point, Chris Pincher hadn't lost a Conservative whip, and he was asked, do you think he should lose it? And Simon Hart didn't toe what the Downing Street line was at the time, which was, and this is aged badly, hasn't it, which was that no further action was necessary. He's fallen on his sword. Even Simon Hart on Friday morning was unwilling to toe the party line. Teresa Coffey this morning looked like she was. I think you're right. She looked. I thought she seemed embarrassed. I think she seemed that she.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if she was the first to resign from cabinet. I mean, it has that feel of it, I'm afraid.
And the question is, for Conservative MPs, for cabinet ministers, how many of them want to continue going onto shows like yours, going into the media and defending these lines, knowing that by this time tomorrow that line's probably collapsed.
But can I just jump in there, because I think that's absolutely right, and I think the problem, and as you say, Teresa Coffey and others, and this is a very independently minded woman, is that increasingly a lot of people feel that their own reputation is on the line here, because if you are always having to defend something which then changes, or those sort of overly casual and silly comments about support of the sex pest, probably in Boris Johnson's mind that is a joke. It's a bad taste joke that Boris Johnson's made days before got away with it. If you're sitting there as a woman in cabinet in a senior position, or indeed as a man who doesn't want to be seen as a Neanderthal in the way that women are treated around the workplace, or the way that any complaints about sexual harassment are handled, whether it's towards a man or a woman, you gradually start to feel a bit grubby yourself. And I hear this a lot from MPs who just feel that their own reputation is beginning to fall off and are wondering how to get that message through to Boris Johnson. He said again and again he would listen more to the feelings of MPs. And I think there's also then a sense that he wanders off abroad, or he gets onto something else that he's more interested in, and he doesn't.
And part of it, and is sorry to butt in there, Adam. Part of it too is not just the events themselves, but as Adam was describing, I spoke to a minister in the week who said it's not really necessarily just the events; it's how badly they're responded to, time and time again. Downing Street seem to get it wrong, or the Prime Minister seems to get it wrong. They either can't respond, don't respond, won't respond, or respond incorrectly, and it's driving MPs and completely round the twist.
I think there's going to be a lot of questions asked about that communications machine. It's now got Guto. Harry was brought back, an old trustee of Boris, of course, from City Hall, where I have to say, I thought he did a very, very good job for Boris Johnson when he was mayor. I thought he was very good at going with the grain of Boris Johnson's very spontaneous character, and then occasionally putting out fires when they arose. It's a different matter in Downing Street, where communications is for a start, it's national and sometimes international. It's not just London. And also there's a sense that Boris Johnson himself has perhaps become a more erratic communicator, and that needs to be gripped. You can't just go along with it anymore, saying whatever you want, Gov, you seem to be brilliant at this, let me just sweep up occasionally after the pony. But this time I think they really do have a strong communications issue, and I have to say, the Labour Party's communications under Keir Starmer looked a bit lacklustre. Do seem to be much more focused, much more on message at the moment. That's a warning to Boris Johnson.
But there is only ever so much glitter you can start to cast round on what the pony produces, Adam, because there are elements of what the Johnson government is attempting to do that also fall apart. You can do as much comms work around it as you want, but the policy isn't there.
Yeah, I just go at Tom as well. We talked about Guto, and let's not forget, earlier this calendar year, when Tory MPs were furious with Boris Johnson, one of the things they demanded was a Downing Street reset. So the Prime Minister said, right, don't worry, I'm going to bring in X, Y and Z. I've got better people in, it'll be fine. And sort of looking at that moment and what's happened since, it's not clear to me that the operation has improved massively. I mean, if we're going to measure it by how many messes it's got itself in since then, I don't think you can really argue that with a straight face. And I think you're right, Tom, in that when you speak to Tory MPs, there's a real feeling at the moment that this government is just sort of lurching from one crisis to another and not a lot is happening in between. We're facing some enormous challenges in this country, the cost of living clearly being the largest one. And MPs were looking for reasons to get behind the government, are looking for a coherent policy agenda to really rally around and to start to grasp. And that isn't really there at the moment.
Do you think, Anne, just very quickly, do you get the impression that this government, Boris Johnson's government, is circling the drain pretty quickly?
Yes, Boris Johnson seems to be able to circle the drain for much longer than the industry standard. Please, listeners might like to provide their own plumbing metaphor, because that's the limit of my knowledge. But I think that the danger is there, but it always takes a little longer with Boris Johnson to unfold. I would also say Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson could say, well, we have done quite a lot in support of the economy. Over 30 million has been allocated. Where is that messaging? This is the other thing that I hear great frustration for MPs. It's not entirely that they are doing nothing. It's just that it gets drowned out by this slightly skip-hop one thing to another, and then here comes the next disaster, the next pony to be swept up after. So I think that is getting lost. That's what they need to focus on.
Really good to speak to you both. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Anne McElvoy, your executive editor of The Economist. Adam Payne, good to speak to you, your political editor of Politics Home. One thinks that there's going to be a big week to come. I'll see you during it. I'll be back with you Monday morning from 7 a.m. in for Nick Ferrari at breakfast, and then here on Sunday at 10 a.m. as well. Next up on LBC, Sangeeta Maiska.
Thank you, Tom. At 3, Jerry Hall is filing for divorce from Rupert Murdoch, citing irreconcilable differences. The couple have 6 marriages and 10 kids between them, yet they both say blended families work. But how? I want your stories. At 2, the holiday plans of millions of Britons are being thrown into chaos as airports struggle to train security staff. Airline workers go on strike, and IT failures cause massive queues at check-ins. What's your plan B if it all goes wrong this summer? But first, Boris Johnson is facing accusations he ignored warnings about alleged sexual misconduct by his former Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher MP, and instead joked about allegations. Are male victims of abuse and violence being let down because we don't take male victims seriously?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 1 o'clock, aviation experts say the acceleration of security checks for airport staff should have started months ago to avoid a summer of disruption. The Department of Transport says anti-terror vetting now takes less than 10 days, half the time it took in March. The change is part of the government's 22-point plan to alleviate delays and cancellations at UK airports before the summer peak. But travel consultant Paul Charles has told Swarbrick on Sunday that the industry has an uphill struggle to attract staff.
One of the problems has been the industry has been underpaying compared with other sectors like online retail, who've been paying significant golden handshakes to people to join. But also there are certainly a lot of people who don't want to work in aviation. So yes, the industry's got to do a lot more, but the point is the government hasn't helped the industry to become more attractive.
The Work and Pensions Secretary, Therese Coffey, says Boris Johnson did not know specific claims about Chris Pincher before appointing him as Deputy Chief Whip. Former Number 10 advisor Dominic Cummings has alleged Boris Johnson had referred to the MP as Pincher by name, Pincher by nature, long before appointing him in February. Therese Coffey claims the Prime Minister acted as soon as he knew there was a problem.
Specific allegations were brought to the Prime Minister's attention. He landed in the country on Friday and the whip was withdrawn later that day. The Prime Minister agreed with the Chief Whip issue.
Boris Johnson's election pledge to build 40 new hospitals by 2030 is facing a review by the government's official spending watchdog. The National Audit Office is planning a value-for-money review that could consider increasing costs due to spiralling inflation, and also consider whether the hospitals will in fact be new. Egyptian authorities have closed off part of the Red Sea coast after an Austrian woman was killed by a shark. A health official says the 68-year-old died after being attacked on Friday. And the Queen's role has been rewritten by Buckingham Palace. In its annual report, Her Majesty's official duties have been edited for the first time in at least a decade. Specific events, including the state opening of Parliament, have been removed and was previously considered necessary by Constitutional Convention. The 96-year-old's mobility issues have recently forced her to pull out of several commitments. LBC weather, sunny spells and showers for many parts. Showers focused across eastern areas by the afternoon may also turn heavy as well. Windy and still rather cool in the northwest with a high of 22 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Morgan.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Sangeeta Maiska.
Hello, good afternoon. It is 3 minutes past 1. I'm Sangeeta Maiska. I'm here with you until 4 o'clock. Loads to talk to you about. At 2 o'clock, our airports appear to be in chaos. There are not enough security staff. They are trying to halve the amount of time it takes to vet security at airports as they're training. Does that make you feel safe? Doesn't make me feel very safe. Meanwhile, BA is still planning to strike. What are your plans this summer, and are you worried about travel disruption? 0345 6060973, taking your calls on that after 2. But at 1, in this next hour, I want to have a conversation that is led by you. The idea has come from you, and I want to make sure that you pick up the phone and talk to me about it. I've been chatting to you, haven't I, for a couple of days now, on Friday and yesterday, about the allegations of sexual misconduct that are now levelled against Chris Pincher MP. He has now stood down as Deputy Chief Whip at the Conservative Party. A line that's emerged today is that Boris Johnson knew about previous allegations, and instead of taking it seriously, he made a joke about
Get ready to turn right.
That then combined with some of the calls and texts that you have been sending me over the last couple of days, and they've really been very, very powerful. And what they have been saying is this: that actually male victims of abuse and violence in Britain are not taken seriously. Particularly if they are the victims of of abuse and violence at the hands of other men.
This is where it ends.
A couple of you have texted in and said that there is a cultural problem, that men who go and report what has happened to them are not taken seriously by the criminal justice system. They may not be taken seriously by their employers. They may not feel that they can confide in their friends and family because they have to be men and they have to stick to a macho stereotype that, frankly, in the context of having been attacked, or in the context of having been traumatized, or in the context of having been the victim of sexual abuse, is just a nonsense. So that's what I want to talk to you about. In this country, do we fail to take male victims of abuse or violence seriously enough? And why is that? Is Boris Johnson's quip about the allegations against Chris Pincher just, well, typical of the attitudes that men who are suffering face? You can pick up the phone and call me, 0345 6060 973, 0345 6060 973. I'm interested in hearing from you if you have been a victim of abuse or violence as a man at the hands of another man, or perhaps at the hands of a woman. I know in my own life there is a friend of ours who was suffering at the hands of his female partner, and he would bring it up in conversation with the guys, and he would kind of make a joke of it, but not. And I know that some of those guys found it really difficult to know what to say, and they didn't take him aside and have a conversation with him because they just felt awkward and weird about it. So pick up the phone and call me, 0345 6060 973. You don't have to use your real name. We do understand these sensitive issues. You may be a law enforcement officer, you may be a counsellor, you may be somebody who's worried about a partner or a friend. 0345 6060 973. There was one call I got, which was on Friday, and it has really stayed with me. It was a caller called Rob, and he rang me up and he said, we need to look at this again. And he told me that he had been the victim of a very serious sexual assault. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. I realise you might be listening with your kids. This might not be appropriate for them. But I want to play that whole interview that I did with Rob, a caller who rang LBC to speak to me, because I think it's really important. And I think he sets out a lot of the cultural issues around male-on-male violence and the stigma that is attached to being a victim.
I'll tell you that I've been raped. So I will tell you exactly what is going to happen over the next 48 to 72 hours.
Can I, Rob, I understand that you've had an absolutely appalling time, but can I just be very clear? We cannot link this directly to Chris Winter.
No, absolutely.
Okay, that's absolutely not the case. He's been... allegedly he has groped 2 men whilst drunk, and it's certainly not a rape allegation. But I understand that what I'm interested in is your insight as someone who was forced to be the complainant.
Yeah, so what will happen is within 48 hours we will get reports in the press about how he has a problem with alcohol.